Yeah, almost took off with my volume down low again. Let's let's just see where this adventure takes us today. Perhaps it is the advent of Pluto into Aquarius, tickling my moon, as it were, that has me wondering, if you will, into areas of the life investigation that paying attention to what the dreams of late have been, querying me to really dip my toes a little bit further into. I awoke somewhere along the way this week, and a curiosity had settled in as to epitomal moments in the awareness infrastructure that occasionally one becomes aware of as it's a challenge to get this exactly into the kind of words that I want to convey here, because there's an interface that transpires, one might query as to whether it's in between each other as we do this life dance, where something, is it larger? Is it more within? Is it actually really on the outside? Where not only do we sense something, but we feel it. You get those goose skin, or the tickling kind of energies that, last night I was watching the movie about Bob Dylan, the new movie. And there were moments during some of those songs where the tears just flowed from my eyes. And it wasn't necessarily just the songs. It was an awareness amplification that, and this is the same thing that I'm trying to talk about here, that in those experiences where something, you can feel it as an actual energy quotient that is, presence, as it's not just as if, but my sensing is that these are opportunities when soul or spirit awareness sits on your shoulder and says, pay attention. There's a larger energy force that is transpiring at this time, that is asking you an important question that is going to change what going forward is about. You're no longer going to be held back, as it were, by factors that you've been trained into. There's a new level of awareness that says, pay attention. Now, my sensing is that this potential can transpire at an increasing amplitude if one were to pay attention more specifically to it. In each of those moments, when Spirit says, hello, are you paying attention? There are a number of planetary statements that are more than just minor dynamic for this week ahead. Let's look at the chart. This is the chart for today, Sunday the 18th. On this day, these two planets, Uranus and the Sun, both sitting at that 27 degrees of Taurus. Sun represents our vitality, that solar drive to be in expression. That core of the solar system, from the ancient Mesopotamian and Egyptian worlds, Ra, the solar god, the one thing that you could count on most of the time. There were eclipses and you had to wonder. The Sabian symbol for this particular thing. Let me throw in some Uranus thoughts there. Uranus. Now, you've all heard the expression that it shakes things up. And it would be foolish of me to deny that in any way, shape, or form, because Uranus's process is of the nature of putting a kind of pressure on what is transpiring that is anything but of a conformity or uniform essence. But why does Uranus do that? They say that Uranus rules Aquarius. I'm not entirely sure that there's an affinity of the Uranian Aquarius dance. Yeah, this is true. But what is Uranus doing when it becomes involved in any conversation? And why does it seem like things might be more than just a wee bit out of balance? The reason is Uranus is trying to get you to wake up, not fall into the somnambulistic, sleep-based reality that society tries to lull you into on so many occasions. Uranus says, I'm going to shake your world just enough to have you go, what was that? Because it's trying to wake you up from that stupor that you are often inclined, if you were, to think, this is the relaxation that I was looking for. Well, the Sun and Uranus today holding hands there at that 27 degrees of Taurus are saying, wake up. in the field of what is of value to you and what does value really mean. Let me give you a few words from the Sabian symbol from Dane Ridger's An Astrological Mandala book. A woman, past her change of life, experiences a new love. Keynote: humanity's capacity to rise in consciousness and feelings above biological limitations. Do you feel a wake-up call potentially at work there? You should. Further words, after having stated the youthful and aged approach of the human individual to the use of what his or her culture has brought to them, the symbolism stresses human capacity to rise above the limitations which both biological nature and the normal social patterns of behavior have tried to impose upon them. As in many of the preceding symbols, a woman is pictured because at this early stage of the cyclic process, the individual consciousness still has a receptive or feminine polarity. I'm actually reading a lot more than I'm actually saying here. The indication is that he or she should freely open his or her mind, I'm going to say heart, to the possibility of always new beginnings, re-beginnings. Ideally, this new beginning should imply a more mature response to the new possibilities of experience. And it is in that kind of energy that I would invite you into the celestial conversation. What is it that you sense is actually transpiring during an astrological consultation? Is it the prescribed versions that have been utilized over and over and over again to say that when these two beings are talking with one another, this is a possibility? This is often the case in most astrological readings because this is how we, learned to describe this celestial dance process, that each of us is invited to do what? Live into in such a fashion that it isn't a repetition of something that you could predict or prescribe to, but more the invitation to say, what can I do with this? What new beginning is trying to get my attention? I have a tendency to attempt, if you will, wandering into and with a level of soul awareness, the process that each of us comes to share in our spirit soul growth incarnation trek across this planetary dance that we are doing with assistance from the celestial host, but more from spirit itself. Remember, I was talking about paying attention to those sparks that show up that create a tingling in our blood, may draw tears from our eyes in a moment of recognition of something larger transpiring. You might hear me say something to this effect in our astrological consultation process. Let us listen for the soul of the other. What other? Is it you? Well, soul doesn't just exist on that limited framework. The other, soul, is enormous. Spirit is everywhere. And as the unfolding conversation in any astrological reading transpires that I'm involved in, there are moments when listening, not just to the words of a conversation, but to the actual energy that is attempting to put in an appearance and unfold, if you will, an awakening process of soul initiation that is going to give you insight into the potential for a new direction to go forth with. Now, let's take a look at this dance that is happening this week. I said, well, here we are. It's now Monday. On Monday, as Monday becomes, as Monday becomes Tuesday, we go through the last quarter moon up there at 29 degrees of Aquarius. And a last quarter moon, it's often been termed, and I think it's appropriate, a crisis in consciousness in the lunar cyclic dance that we go through each month. When it comes to that last quarter moon, we've had the process of, from the moon's perspective, feeling into what has been touched as the moon has done its dance around the zodiac. This particular dance began near the beginning of Taurus as a question, if you will. Where is it that I plant the anchor of what is of value to me for the consideration of this particular lunar cycle? When we get to that last quarter, the moon has touched a lot of things in the chart energetically. It's gone from Taurus all the way around to Aquarius now. And this last, where would that crisis in consciousness, develop? It's kind of like, is it in an Aquarian kind of energy that says, are there versions of the larger picture of what it is that we as humanity need to awaken to? That, the previous dance that the moon has taken through all these different signs has been asking me to pay attention to. And here at this crisis in consciousness, final quarter of the moon, the reason is that last quarter section of the moon reflects within. What has life been trying to get my attention with? That at this part of the lunar cycle, I need to resolve, reflect upon, and determine, what are the worthwhile processes that I came in contact with, and what are superfluous that I can actually let go of, jettison, reject. That may seem a little harsh, but sometimes that is required. And in an Aquarian fashion, that that shifting day-night kind of energy that sometimes moves through the Aquarian realm that says, I'm tired of going in that direction, I'm going in a different direction. You can kind of see an essence there of that Uranian factor in play. So this last quarter moon that this week is going to be in play, resolve, if you will. What are the appropriate things that you need to hold close? Actually allow, if you will, to absorb into your soul awareness. This is the question. That in any moment where, things seem a little bit dicey in the process of what is being shown to me, look deeper. Ask questions. It's like when I'm doing an astrological chart. I don't necessarily know the ramifications of any particular celestial conversation that's going on. What the outcome of them are going to be is something that is going to come through you. I will learn something from it. You have the opportunity as well if you're paying attention. When we come out of that experience, the trajectory that each of us is on is going to be altered. As the 20th shifts into the 21st, you can kind of see here the sun is only got 10 minutes left to go. of Taurus before it goes into. So as the 20th unfolds, the sun is going to shift into Gemini. Whenever one of the celestial beings shifts signs, there is an energetic set of circumstances that is altered. The sun has just come out of a Taurian zone where, really tuning in and paying attention to how in tune am I with my connection to my resources at many levels. Yeah, you could say your money, what it is that you own, but perhaps more deeply, if you're willing, your connection to the physical environment that you find yourself within. Not as just a passerby or a pass-through, but an actual participant, energetically in tune with all the creative elements of this planetary being of which we are all a part. The shift to Gemini that happens on Wednesday, a mercurial day, is, it's kind of like, I feel like from a Taurian perspective, I've been enjoying being able to allow life to provide things for and to me, willingly, appreciating the comforts of this experience of being alive. Now, Gemini puts in an appearance, takes that mercurial awareness, which, by the way, you can kind of see, is also sneaking up on this Uranus. Is key words for Gemini. Communication. All kinds. Curiosity. That's almost like the middle name for Gemini. Give me input. I have questions. Why? How? This is essential Gemini at work, that the middle of this week on a Mercury day comes into, more fuller resonance. Here's the process where the interaction with others takes on an adventurous side. There's a curiosity. Why are you the way you are? And why am I drawn to you in this moment? Let's investigate that and see where it takes us. What avenues of further elucidation is this going to be a potential educational awakening for both of us? It's a possibility if you're willing. Are you open to not just asking the questions, but listening to the answers, allowing input to come back to you without the immediate need to think of the next question. It's a challenge. I know, because we live in a world where, there's that rapid fire. I want more. And yet, are you really and willing to listen? On this very same day, we have a Mars and Venus trine in the air sign and fire signs, excuse me. Pardon me. Yeah, right in your ear too, and my speaker, my microphone. A trine energy means that they're both in the same element, and this is a fire element, so you can kind of feel a stirring up of the energy quotient that fire represents. And we've got Mars, the ruler of Aries and Scorpio, in Leo, seeking overt outward expression. That is how Leo works. And the ruler of Leo is the sun. It has just gone into Gemini. There's an additional driving quality to this curiosity factor that, from a Leonian perspective, I need input on. I need to get some feedback. That's the Mars energy that's in play right now. Venus over there in Aries, the sign that's ruled by Mars, not exactly in its comfort zone because it rules Libra, the opposite sign. So while it's in Aries, it's kind of like, the whole experience of relationship to anything and everything, because that's how relationship really can and should work. In Aries, possibly this trine, they're talking to each other very effectively, this Mars and Venus, are probably going to inspire. That means to breathe in, the potential for interaction. There's that Gemini and Leo at work with others to what? Be curious, get that feedback that is going to inspire, illuminate, if you will, and provide us with the next door opening into where it is that we might want to head. Our next aspect, since the sun has just gone into Gemini, is a sextile between the sun and Neptune. How to bring Neptune into a consideration without getting too carried away with the realms of imagination, or perhaps allowing some of that imaginary field to be an incentive. After all, the sun is in Gemini, as to asking questions that you may not know where and from what part of the outfield they're arriving. Perhaps, I'm just going to say, maybe Spirit is trying to function through you to have you, ask something that will require thinking. Not an instantaneous answer, but, a reflection. A deeper reflection, if you will, into the process. Not an instant answer, but a process. And allowing into the potential for something new to put in an appearance. I mean, it would get kind of old and tiring if all the responses that we were getting back were things that you already knew. Directions that you'd already investigated. And you weren't going to be any the more wiser upon receiving them. And just for a little extra tweak to the week, I love it. We get to the 24th. Our sun here at 3 degrees of Gemini has just moved into a trine with Pluto retrograde up here at 3 degrees of Aquarius. These are two air signs. The sun has some questions. Always in Gemini, I have questions. Now, Pluto, it might say, I have answers. But because I'm Pluto, I'm going to require you to actually dig a little bit deeper in order for you to discover the answers that likely are already buried within you. Can you feel that? This is soul speaking. Spirit in touch with everything. And this Pluto-Sun trine is saying, stop. Listen. Feel with your heart, not this overtly, often overworked mental capacity that you are, but feel it. Use your heart to sense, if you will. Maybe, just maybe, you'll get one of those inspirational tweaks where Spirit's going to come through. You'll get goosebumps, or the tears will start to flow down your cheeks as awareness reminds you of the larger connection that you have always got but had forgotten for a moment. Well, this week would not be complete without one more planet changing signs. Saturn, ruler of Aquarius and Capricorn, shifts from Pisces into Aries and will be here for a while before it does one more last little jaunt back into Pisces. But the key now is Saturn. What are the rules? What structures are in play that have been steeped, if you will, in the Piscean zone of, unlimitation? A very vast, deep, and profound arena where dreamscapes are invited to put in an appearance. The creation of, escape processes are contemplated. From the structured perspective of Saturn, it's like, no, I don't want to take that. No, I need something a little bit more, that I can control and stuff. Not to happen when doing the Piscean dance. But now Saturn, it takes his step. That is a 2.5-year-long cycle of Saturn going through Aries. Now, who is the Aries player? Keywords for Aries. I am. Who is this self that proclaims its I amness? And from a Saturnian perspective, still very much, wondering as it moves into closer proximity with Neptune, which also has an affinity with Pisces, as to, the appropriateness of what that version of I am, personal identity, is. And at the same time, the impulse of Aries being driven by that Mars, its ruler in Leo, saying, I need to express something out there. I would just advise listening within. Listen to your soul as it really contemplates this, because the recourse of that Aryan drive in Leo to take chances and put stuff out there, as far as the definition of who you might be from a Saturnian perspective, trying to develop as a meaningful you, tied in with Neptune, may not be as clear as you had hoped. But this is a learning process, and Mars is going to take those chances. Just be aware that the responses that you're going to get are going to have you questioning quite specifically that definition that you have of yourself. They're not necessarily wrong, because self, we are complicated beings. You just have to ask, who do I want to be? How connected to Source am I going to allow myself to consider? And, one more thought for the week. We'll go back one day. On this Saturday, Mercury is toying with Uranus. And as Saturday becomes Sunday, once again, the Uranian factor is in play. So Sunday, you have to wonder, am I willing to be born anew? That's a very pertinent question. Am I willing to awaken to aspects of myself and what it is that I am thinking and communicating that are, repetitions, regurgitations of all those things that people have told me is the way life needs to be, or potentially, might there be a new level of awareness that is trying to put in an appearance that is coming through from your spirit soul side, saying, there's a whole heck of a lot more to you than, others may have allowed you to perceive. And in true Uranian fashion, the call comes through from spirit. Wake up. Do you feel the rattlings of a, discomfort that are shaking your world? They're trying to create a spontaneity in you to take chances in the discovery of who you are. This is, after all, what is up. Okay, I probably talked enough for this particular week. As you can see, there is a lot going on this week. We have the new potential levels of personal awareness. Why did I, as a soul being, come to incarnate currently on planet Earth? And have I been paying attention to the program that I signed up to awaken in this Earth walk that I currently inhabit? That's all I got for this week. I hope you take the chance to discover you are way more than you ever thought you were.